You can't get much more of a Japanese shot than this. The Japanese castle, often the tourist talisman for the places that still have them. Just look at the places like Osaka and Himeji and you'll see their respective castles topping lists of most visited places. They're often considered so valuable that many places have actually rebuilt them over the years, given that many were purposefully destroyed during and after the major restoration of 1868. And so it stands to reason that any place, especially those more rural, left-behind areas, would take a bloody castle if they had it. So why on earth, in this rural corner of Japan, do they absolutely despise this castle? In order to explain just why the locals here hate this castle so much, I'll need to delve into the one topic that everybody just loves: politics. In specific, the history of one particular Japanese political party, the Zen-Nihon Dowa-kai, or All Japan Dowa Association. For simplicity though, I'll call them the Dowa Association for this video. This party focused mainly on the issue of buraku discrimination, the discrimination of certain groups of individuals, mainly related to their occupation. You see, back in the Edo period, certain jobs such as leather workers or butchers were classified as a lower class of people. As a result, they were often subjected to discrimination and forced segregation into certain neighborhoods, often the dirty outskirts. These people were called burakumin, or hamlet people. And although by the time the Dowa Association was formed in 1960, this feudal class system was long abolished, inequality still remained a big problem, especially in areas of employment and education. And this is because even if you weren't doing any of these jobs, just the association by family, or where you lived, gave you this title. It was so bad that companies would purchase lists of burakumin communities, which influenced whether or not they would employ people. The ideological aim of the Dowa Association, therefore, was to push for policies tackling this inequality. And at the height of their popularity, they certainly had the ears of the people who could make things happen. The party was historically deeply connected to the LDP, Japan's most dominant party even today, whose members helped establish the Dowa Association. This, alongside other factors, propelled the party to, at one point, have apparently the highest number of registered members of all political parties in Japan. On paper at least. However, as with politics, all that influence often comes with corruption and scandals, and holy heck, did this party have some scandals. It was almost endemic all across the country and its branch offices. And indeed, this castle, the topic of today's video, stands as a symbol of perhaps the biggest of these scandals. Enter this story's protagonist, Matsuo Masanobu, the chairman of the party around the early 80s. And major bloody narcissist. But wait, okay, hold on. You may at this point be wondering, alright, this is interesting all, but what does this old dude in his party have to do with a castle that probably came long before either of them? Well, remember how I mentioned earlier that castles have been rebuilt over the years? Well, those craftsmanship skills obviously aren't limited to just those. Indeed, this castle wasn't, in fact, built hundreds of years ago or whatever, but sometime in the 80s. I'm not quite sure of the date, but I'm pretty sure it was completed around the early 80s. And while I introduced this castle as Kusubashi Castle, taking its name from the local area, it is also known by another name, Matsuo Castle. Now, where have we heard that name before? Yep, in case you haven't guessed it, this castle ain't some historical building, but the narcissistic project of a corrupt, powerful politician. Remember how I mentioned all the scandals the Dowa Association was involved in? Turns out this man was the mastermind of a huge land scandal in Kitakyushu, where he would essentially buy land for dirt cheap, and then sell it to the local city government for 5 to 30 times of what he bought it for. But why on earth did the local government agree to all this? Well, turns out Matsuo had an ace up his sleeve to combat any and all objections they may have. Remember all that talk about buraku discrimination? Well, Matsuo used that to essentially blackmail officials, saying that if they don't buy the land, then they would take this as discrimination.
The Liberation League is easily able to sell land for road expansion. Why can't you buy land from us? Are you discriminating against us?
And I suppose it worked. Officials were too scared to let that happen, so they just bought the land, promising it'd be for various housing projects to improve conditions for people affected by buraku discrimination. Much of these projects, however, if they even ever existed, never went ahead. As a result, all this land rolling made Mr. Matsuo very, very wealthy. So much that he could finally accomplish his lifelong dream. Yep, and that's right, to build a castle. Now, the story from here perhaps gets a little predictable. To summarize, all this gets found out, huge scandal, the party splits and declines, and while the party now still exists, it's a tiny shell of what it used to be. And it should now be obvious why this castle is so despised. It's a huge physical symbol for the scandal that Matsuo was involved in, but it's even worse for the locals. This castle was built against the wishes of the local community, but anyone who tried to object were often subject to things like dead animals hung to their homes, or Dowa Association musclemen coming to their front door. This isn't even, of course, to mention all of their taxes that went towards that building. And yet, the fallout of all those things Matsuo still did back more than 40 years ago still stands in this obscure corner of rural Japan. And I suppose it makes sense. You can't just convert it into some public attraction given its history, and on the other hand, it's probably in some sort of grey area that doesn't make it possible to just knock it down. And let's just say the last time they tried to investigate the building, it didn't go quite so well.
Building a castle has been a dream since I was a child, and I have no intention of stopping now. If you enter without permission, we will not guarantee your life.
So yeah, that's how that went. Apparently he also hung even more dead animals outside of his house to, I suppose, deter people from coming in. I don't know what this guy had with dead animals. He seemed quite like using them, but let's just put that aside, I guess. I think I've been teasing you guys for long enough now. I'm pretty sure you've been seeing from the background footage and all that obviously I went to this place, I recorded it, so, what does it look like right now? What's in the area? Because you'll be maybe surprised to know that it wasn't just a castle this guy built. This guy built a lot of stuff. It was almost as if he wanted to make his own little kingdom in this little area. So what we're going to do is just kind of comb over the footage, because unfortunately it was a bit of a windy day and a lot of the footage just sounds like this.
It's getting windy, the winds of his soul.
So unfortunately you won't be able to hear much of the commentary from myself and my good friends Callum and Alicia as well, who actually live a bit close to the castle. They're the ones who actually introduced me to it, but I'll pick out the best bits and we'll see what this madman built in the area. So one thing about the castle is that from a distance especially, it looks to be in really good condition still, and it looks quite good. I mean, for all the horrible background of it, it was built pretty well, but the closer you get, the more you can see. I mean, the walls of the castle walls are kind of cracking, it's all overgrown and all that, and a lot of the tiles and paintwork is really kind of peeling off at this point. I mean, the guy has been, I think he passed away around 2003 or so, and I assume no one's lived there or done anything with it since then, so I guess it's kind of natural. And speaking of those walls, I mean, they're pretty tall. I mean, they're a good couple of meters tall. You get the impression the guy didn't want to be seen by the locals despite plopping his castle in the middle of their community. But, well, it didn't seem like the kind of guy to really care about stuff like that. And so on the ground level, you can see as we kind of turn around in this corner, you see one of the entrances. You can see there's kind of a path at the top. That's another entrance, but the kind of main entrance, I guess, from its appearance at least, is this like really ornate gate. I mean, as we're kind of coming up to it, you can see it's kind of coiled with dragons, it's a kind of carved wooden dragons and stuff. Really ornate, and honestly, again, despite the dubious background of this castle, really well made. It's obviously, I don't know if I'd call it a shame that it's kind of falling to pieces, but I mean, that's just kind of, I guess, the reality of it. The door to the gates is obviously like shut. It's kind of wired shut. But if you kind of go to the right of the gate, you can actually see the walkway up. I mean, it's quite overgrown now of all, whatever was planted there, I guess, when he still lived there. But it's kind of cool to see all those steps up. Just imagining an old Matsuo walking up there. I mean, I'm not sure if he actually used that because, he seemed like quite an old man, even back in those photos. But there's also this really creepy mask on the doorway. I don't know why, I don't know what it is. But, I mean, if you do, let me know. Because, yeah, I don't know, it looks somewhat interesting at least. And I mean, they definitely went all out on the castle aesthetic. I mean, it's even got like a turret, they call on the left, that kind of little building. It's usually used for defenses, which, again, kind of gives you an idea, I guess, onto the psychology of this man, I guess. Definitely not the actions of a man with something to hide. Let's just put it that way. And if you kind of keep walking around, you can see the entrance. I guess probably the main entrance he used, given that it's kind of a driveway that you can drive up to, which again, I suppose it's a part of this castle's property or whatever, and it has a load of like buildings to the right, I guess, maybe servants live there, whatever, I don't know. And as you're kind of walking up to the castle, there's a load of mysterious looking stuff, like this weird kind of leopard statue. The paint's all gone, from all the years. There's like a table and stuff like that. Again, very, very odd. And then you can see here, obviously, the pathway up to the castle, which there is a kind of chain blocking it, which physically doesn't do much to stop someone from walking up there, but you can only assume that. Probably best not to to go all the way up there. Oh yeah, there's toilets here as well. That's great. But yeah, oh god, what I do to kind of walk up there, but unfortunately, yeah, I'm not keen to break the law here, so not walking that far up. But yeah, from me, you can see just how overgrown all the trees and stuff are. It's kind of almost covering the view of the castle. It kind of actually looks quite pretty like this, to be honest. I don't know. But to be honest, that's really all that we can see on the castle. There are some pictures out there on a website that I found with some kind of aerial pictures of what kind of is going on in the main courtyard, I guess. But I'm not going to show those just because the website requests us to not do so. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the castle. But as I said, would you believe it? There's even more than this. So you see a castle and I raise you a whole bloody temple. Yeah, this guy, I'm not sure if he wanted to try and balance out his crimes or whatever by building a temple pretty much next to the castle, but yeah, he did, all complete with a massive statue as well. Again, it looks like compensating to me, but what do we know? Again, we can't get in, it's all locked and all that, but again, really quite impressive structure, to be honest. This guy definitely had a lot of money to swing around. Let's be clear about that. Now, the thing is with temples is that I'm pretty sure it has to be kind of officially designated or officially kind of recognized in some kind of form or fashion. I'm not the premier expert on that kind of stuff, but very clear this one doesn't fall under that because, again, it's all locked, where usually temples are kind of open access in a way. It's kind of a public building, I suppose. The condition of the building's not looking good. Apparently the face of the baby of the statue is like all chiseled out or like worn out in a way. The windows are all kind of torn out. So yeah, definitely not recognized. And again, I think it falls under the same category of, well, they can't just tear it down because of some kind of, grey area. So it's kind of just here. And that's probably the way it's going to be for the foreseeable future. And right next to the temple, you also have a Door Association branch office, but it's not really interesting. So we'll skip over to what's the final and probably most interesting thing, and that's his actual office, which is nearby both the castle and this temple he built. Now, it isn't actually the building itself which is the most interesting, although it is still interesting. I mean, you've got his name kind of made up at the top of the building, although it's kind of falling apart now. You can barely make out the characters of his name. And the entrance itself is certainly a bit castle-like in that you've got a like watch room where you can see he was kind of entering and exiting his office. You know how I mentioned earlier about the castle and the tall walls, how he maybe didn't want anyone to see him? Well, this certainly makes sure that people are being watched, that's for sure. There's also a policeman, kind of a model statue policeman outside of this gate, which again, definitely not official, not sanctioned. They, I guess, put that out there to scare people to get away in case they get in trouble, I guess, something like that. But yeah, definitely not official and more funny, I guess, at this point. You'll also see that the footage, unfortunately, is in slow motion. I messed up, frankly, when I was recording this, but I guess it'll work. But no, what I really want to show you guys is actually something that's outside of the office, and it's probably one of the best examples of the absolute narcissism of this guy. And it's not one, but two golden statues of himself. Wow. And I think that sums up the man pretty well. A statue of himself surrounded by the things he built, which are now slowly crumbling and falling apart. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for me and from this video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you'll look forward to any future videos I make. But for now, that'll be it from me. I'll see you around.